Top of the SportsMax zone for this Wednesday, and we're going to talk some cricket now. The West Indies and England have it all to play for in the third and final test for the Richards-Botham Trophy at the Grenada National Stadium. On Thursday it starts. Ahead of the match, the West Indies head coach Phil Simmons has been talking about his satisfaction with the performance of his players.
The squad has done well. I think we've done well as a squad, and when you do that, you kind of give people confidence to go out there and keep doing what we've been doing. A couple of guys haven't gotten off, which doesn't take away from how good the squad has done so far. So it was good to keep the same squad.
And any indication whether the final 11 will be the same?
No indication yet. We have to get together.
All right. We'll see tomorrow. Thank you.
A broad smile there from the face of Phil Simmons, head coach of the West Indies team, joining us to preview the decider, international cricket commentator Fazeer Mohammed. Well, Faz, most of our discussions on the series so far has been centered around the pitch conditions and the batting-friendly conditions exhibited by the pitches in both Antigua and Barbados. We are being told that the Grenada pitch is likely to offer a more even prospect for both bat and ball. Are you convinced by those pronouncements?
Well, I'll quote what Phil Simmons had to say in that same interview with the Caribbean media. He said, it's a nice tinge of green. It looks firm, it looks even, but let's wait and see how it plays, because a look doesn't necessarily mean that it will play, but at least the appearance is far more encouraging. And you talked about it being batting-friendly conditions, and the numbers would suggest that. But I don't think attacking batsmen, aggressive batsmen, would have particularly enjoyed Antigua and Barbados. And that's the issue, Lance. That it's all well and good to see people accumulating runs, tremendous effort from Craig Brathwaite and so on. But at the end of the day, it's eminently forgettable. And what you want is a contest. And if nothing else, let's hope that the test match starting tomorrow in Grenada gives us a proper contest between bat and ball, and may the better team win.
Yeah, Faz, I'm putting you in charge of the team selection now. You're coach and the tour management, picking the 11 for this test match. Do you use the same 11 that played in Antigua and Barbados?
Well, I'm definitely going to adjust my batting lineup. Shamar Brooks is out. Al Mayers comes in. Nkrumah Bonner goes up to number 3, Mayers to number 4. The bowling department, I'll probably keep it as is, unless there's an issue with fatigue or any niggle for any of the faster bowlers. Because remember, they're playing 3 test matches back to back to back, and they've had a lot of work to do on unresponsive services in Antigua and, of course, Barbados as well. So unless there's a real issue with fitness and there's a concern that maybe someone could break down or maybe overworked, I'll stay with the rest of the team unchanged. If there is a fitness issue, then Anderson Phillip, I think, will come in for one of those fast bowlers. Who knows, maybe a Jaden Seals might be an option, but that is just pure speculation on my part, of course.
Yes, Baz, and as we continue to preview the match tomorrow, the third test, my question to you is, based on how Craig Brathwaite has continued to step up, he has held his own and he has even held the entire team together, if I'm to say so. Would it be unfair? And people have a habit of, once you do well, they want you to do more. Would it be unfair to expect Craig Brathwaite to, display the same heroics that we saw from him in the previous test?
Of course, it's unreasonable, but that is always an expectation when someone has done extremely well, not just in the last test match with that tremendous effort of batting, for facing more deliveries than ever faced by a West Indian in test match cricket, getting that 106th day and the unbeaten half century to ensure that the match ended in a draw. And Nkrumah Bonner did the same thing in the first test match, a battling Page 100 in the first innings, 13 not out in the second innings, not to the same extent as Brathwaite, but you expect players to step up. So in the same way that Bonner would have liked to do the same in the second test match and didn't, somebody will have to need to step up, whether it's a Brathwaite. And if it is a pitch with pace and bounce, with seam movement, with encouragement for the spinners, just prodding and poking might not be enough. Yeah. Because you can poke and get an outside edge to second slip. That's just the difference if there is some pace and bounce and some carry on the track at the Grenada National Stadium. So yeah, obviously Craig Brathwaite and everybody would like to see him continue in that vein, but it doesn't necessarily follow.
Yeah, I know we haven't seen much tests played on this Grenada Stadium, only 3 so far, so this will be the 4th. Who do you think, out of the pick of the bowlers, just from the 3 tests that we've seen, would fare well based on, previous matches, history and whatnot?
I think Kemar Roach has a good record on this ground. In fact, when he played his first test match series in 2009, that series famously where all the top players decided that they would not make themselves available, and yet another one of those disputes with the West Indies Cricket Board at the time. Roach picked up his first 5-wicket haul in that test match against Bangladesh. The West Indies lost that one, but that apart, you would think that someone like a Kemar Roach, with his consistently of line and length, would be able to capitalize. Jason Holder, likewise, very, very accurate, gets a bit of seam movement also. And on the English side, you look at their bowling, their seam bowling. Saki Mahmood was a potential match winner on that final afternoon. They've got Craig Overton coming back into the team because he fell ill on the eve of the second test match. Ben Stokes is another likely candidate. So there are a number of options there on both sides. The spinners could very well have a role to play again. Jack Leach versus Sami Pamol. So basically what I'm saying is that all the options are open. I suppose we'll have to wait and see the first 2 hours play, or maybe the first hour's play, to really get a sense of all of the optimism of a more sporting pitch is actually being fulfilled, or if it comes to nothing, and if we have to stock up on more coffee for the first 4 days of the test match.
Yeah, as a couple of days ago, the narrative coming out of the England camp was that they were optimistic that Ollie Robinson would be fit enough to play. In the past couple of hours, we were getting news that he, after all, will not play. Would you consider that a setback for the Englishmen as far as beefing up their seam attack is concerned?
Absolutely. A setback for England because he's obviously someone that identified for the future from the English summer, the early English summer. And of course, he had those issues with his comments previously that caused a lot of problems. He was suspended after his very first test match. Hopefully, he would have put that behind him, but hopefully, he would have learned his lesson as well from that entire experience, because this is a very different time now as far as players being aware of their own behavior and their own conduct and so on. But I think there's also a concern as to whether Ollie Robinson is working hard enough on his fitness, because that was an issue in the Ashes campaign. Yes, they were hammered, coming and going, but there was a concern as to whether or not Robinson was putting in the work that was required to ensure that he remains fit and ready to represent England in test match cricket. And I suspect that is a concern once again, because he had back spasms in the warm-up match. That was 3 weeks ago. Apparently it's flared up again. Whether it's a long-term concern, whether it's an ongoing and chronic problem of some sort, we don't know for sure. But clearly there's an issue there. And I think the authorities on the English side will want to know whether Ollie Robinson is putting in the work to ensure that he's as fit as possible. But missing this test match like the previous 2 is obviously a setback for England.
Yeah, Faz, the West Indies fraternity has long boasted about their impeccable almost record against England in the past 50 years in home series, losing only one home series since the 1960s. But in this test series that we've seen so far, both ended with the West Indies hanging on, the West Indies trying to avoid defeat. Does this give England a confidence-boosting feel going into this final test match? And are they favourites, England?
Whether they are favourites, maybe touch and go, but certainly, given the way they played the first 2 test matches, and if there is some juice on that track, you would have to say that they would be favourites, marginal favourites, going into the test match. But just to put your point in context, yes, you're right. The West Indies have every reason to be proud about that record. Just 2 series losses in 54 years. But I'm sure you'll recall famously in 2009, after England were routed for 51, Jerome Taylor with those 5 wickets winning at Sabina Park. Thereafter, it seemed to be a deliberate tactic to prepare the deadest of dead pitches, so much so that the Barbados test had tons of runs. Ramnari Sarawan got 291. Yet even for all of that, the West Indies hung on in Antigua with only 1 wicket in hand, playing at the ARG after the match had to be switched from the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium. Yet another fiasco about the outfield. And then the final test in Trinidad and Tobago, where 7 test centuries was called, 7 individual hundreds was scored in that match, and it ended with the West Indies hanging on with 2 wickets in hand. So yeah, it's a proud record, of course, when you look at the bare numbers. When you go inside those numbers, though, Lance, you recognize that England have had their moments, and they'll have to try and make this a moment as well.
Yeah, Faz, we're going to leave it there. We're going to go to a break, but we're going to be talking the West Indies and their women as they continue their battle in the ICC Women's World Cup in New Zealand. We go to break, back after this.